Is Pierre Poilievre aware of Trudeau's next censorship legislation, which tentatively has been called the Online Safety Act, will probably be called that again, but is also being referred to as the Online Harms Act. Let's hear what Mr. Poilievre says about that.
We will oppose Justin Trudeau's latest attack on freedom of expression. And I want to ask, what does Justin Trudeau mean when he says the word hate speech? He means speech he hates. So, for example, let's go through some of the things he said is hate speech. Jerry Butts, the PMO puppet master, said that it was hate speech to criticize Trudeau for using the ridiculous term people kind, right? Justin Trudeau said anyone who criticized him during the pandemic was engaging in hate speech. Basically, anybody who disagrees with his radical agenda when it comes to kids, he says is hate speech. He attacked Muslim parents who were protesting against his agenda. Is he going to criminalize those Muslim parents for protecting their children in schools? Go down the list of things that Justin Trudeau disapproves of, and you can imagine all of the things that will be criminalized. Then there becomes the question of who is going to be in charge of determining what is hate speech. Recently, a school board in Ontario banned Anne Frank's books. Okay, so would that be considered hate speech under Justin Trudeau's woke authoritarian agenda? I think it would. So anyone who thinks that speech they don't like is going to be criminalized and therefore the bill should be supported, go through that. Those people should go through the list of their own thoughts that Justin Trudeau considers to be unacceptable views, and you can assume that he will ban all of that as well. And finally, I point out the irony that someone who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, who dressed up in hideous racist costumes so many times he says he can't remember them all, should then be the arbiter on what constitutes hate. Why doesn't he? What he should actually do is look into his own heart and ask himself why he was such a hateful racist. For despite his enormous personal privileges of a multi-million-dollar trust fund, being the son of a prime minister, growing up in mansions, traveling the world, why he had so much hate in his heart that he was such an awful racist. And what he should do is actually explain where that ugliness came from, and maybe in that way, rather than through coercion, he could help us all in the fight against real hate. Thank you.
Now that's turning the tables on Justin Trudeau, who's always accusing his enemies, political enemies, his political opponents, anyone he disagrees with as being racist, misogynist, sometimes even Nazis. But Pierre Poilievre has made it quite clear here. Trudeau is the one who's exercised racist behavior, racist activity for most of his adult life. Yes, Mr. Blackface performer, a gifted blackface performer who really seems to think this was his second career for a large part of his life. And as Poilievre says, no, he can't remember how many times he did it, how many videos are still out there not being displayed or shown. Yes, Justin Trudeau is the one with the race problems. And Justin Trudeau is the one who seems to want to go after everybody else but himself, as usual. As usual. So this is very significant what Pierre Poilievre is saying here, because he is saying the Conservative Party is not going to criminalize speech, because hate speech can mean anything you want it to mean, and it will mean anything Justin Trudeau says it means. The Online Safety Act, which is coming our way, it may be called the Online Harm Act. I don't know yet. It hasn't been introduced. It was previously introduced as the Online Safety Act. And that's probably how it's going to be reintroduced, just like it was recently passed in the United Kingdom. And what does it do? It bans disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. Anything that the government disagrees with. And it criminalizes so called hate speech even further, specifically on the internet. The problem is, it doesn't define any of these concepts. It just leaves it up to the discretion of the government. And where is this occurring? All over the world, literally, as I speak. Canada is continuing to make the adjustments to its censorship trilogy. We had C11, C18, and the next C something or other is coming with the Online Safety Act or the Online Harm Act. United States has got the Restrict Act. Great Britain, the Online Safety Bill has passed. European Union has passed the Digital Services Act. Australia has passed its Online Safety Act. Yes, it's out there. And this is a clear and present danger to all of us who are on the internet as independent journalists, but it's also a clear and present threat to all of us as Canadians who value, who treasure, who have a meaningful relationship with our free speech and think that's a cornerstone of democracy, a foundation of Canadian democratic life, of our liberty. That can be taken away from us from a hypocrite like Justin Trudeau, who's been a racist in his behavior his entire life, but yet calls everybody else a racist but himself because he feeds off identity politics. Is there a larger issue here? Is there a larger agenda? Yes, you saw where it's happening in democratic countries around the world. Is there a global agenda here that Trudeau isn't even talking about? You bet there is. And if you haven't watched this entire interview, here's something you really need to see. Watch this.
Is driven by the EU Digital Services Act, and NATO being the sort of military arm of the EU. This is going to be the main tool that will be used to try to force Elon to censor like the other major platforms. Those censorship standards are being teed up with the EU's joint partnership with groups like NewsGuard. You know, we've talked about NewsGuard as Michael V. Hayden on its board, former head of the CIA, NSA, four-star general. It has Anders Fogh Rasmussen on its board, the former head of NATO, Tom Ridge, the former head of DHS, Rick Stengel, the former head of the Global Engagement Center at the State Department. It is this sort of apex predator of the national security state all-star squad, and it's working with the European Union to craft the disinformation regulations that X is going to be in a bind to comply with, because it'll cost them 6% of their annual revenue if they don't comply, and they're not going to want to get kicked out of the EU market, because the EU market is even larger than the US market. It's 450 million people in the EU versus only 300 million some in the US. So they're really caught in the crosshairs here. You know, I don't mean to take it back to Taylor Swift, but you had the head of the EU make a plea 3 weeks ago to Taylor Swift to do a get out the vote campaign for in all the European countries that her European tour is set to do just weeks before the EU elections. And the main thing is, if the EU's parliamentary majorities hold for the pro-NATO factions, they will be using this transatlantic flank attack. That is, the U.S. State Department will be working with the EU regulators to force any U.S. companies who don't take down disinformation about the elections to essentially forfeit their entire EU market license.
So if you haven't listened to Mike Benz before, he's a former member of the deep state. He knows what's going on. He was part of the engineering of it. He knows what's happening. How, yes, Elon Musk will be a target for not bowing to the censorship regulations. Elon Musk is by no means perfect, and neither is his social media outlet X. I have trouble with it all the time in terms of it suppressing my stories, but he is trying to move it away from the blanket censorship it had experienced previously. And you bet the international censors want to come down on him with all their force and all their might. So this is a very dangerous operation that's going on. And the last thing we need to do as Canadians is to pretend it's somebody else's problem. Justin Trudeau, as an acolyte of the World Economic Forum, as a fan and a friend of the WEF's director, Klaus Schwab, has been instrumental in advancing the censorship agenda in Canada and around the world. What goes for Canada, as you can see, is going for other democratic countries. And the EU is taking a very hard line on this, and it's going to further impact us all in Canada and throughout the world. So this is a very dangerous position. And Poilievre needs to be frank and honest about that, and he needs to make his opposition to the criminalizing of free speech. He needs to say, no, a conservative government won't do it. It will repeal any movements by the Liberals, by the Trudeau government to do so. And it will always come down on the side of free speech and against these nebulous and undefined concepts of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, and hate speech, which are up to anybody's interpretation, especially those who are in power and who want to lord it over us and take away our rights. So this is very important stuff. I urge you, get educated, make sure you know what's going on. And when this bill is introduced, and it will be, make sure you understand what it's all about and make sure you, your friends, and your family are actively opposing it, writing your MPs, making sure that they understand this is very dangerous ground that we as Canadians are not prepared to walk on. Thank you for watching this episode of Stand on Guard and being a part of the KRAYDEN'S Right channel. If you've watched this episode to this point, you've watched it all. And that's really important for a small station like this. We always say subscribe, hit the bell, be a part of the KRAYDEN resistance. Resolve to resist. That's what we're doing. And if you become a subscriber, if you're a supporter of this station or a member through Substack, through YouTube, and now you can be a local as well, that's so important to us because I couldn't do this without you. I made a decision to become an independent journalist about a year ago because I wanted to bring all of my experience in the military, in journalism, to you. I don't promise anything I can't deliver. I don't offer clickbait. I offer truth. The truth is out there, and it's my job to bring that truth to light and to you. Thanks for being a part of the KRAYDEN'S Right resistance, and we'll see you again soon. So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need a political change, but we also need to resolve to resist.
I did not call people who were unvaccinated names.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
For everything you did, thank you to put your life on the line for us. You're one of the greatest women I ever met in my life.
Feel because you all will have implants. I can, and we measure your brain waves, and I can immediately tell you how the people react, or I can feel how the people react to your answers.
Oh, no, Mr. Bond. I expect you to be chipped.
I'm a liberal and a proud socialist, Mr. Speaker.
This is a Manchurian candidate. For people who don't understand the expression, I'm not talking about the movie. I'm referring to somebody who can be used as a useful idiot by another country to come out and spout these things off. He is a Marxist.
End your silence. Speak up. For God's sake, stop complying. Start rebelling. They're out to get you if you do not resist.
Good buddy, mercy's sake alive. Looks like we got us a convoy.
Canadian country singer Paul Brandt here. I've been listening with my wife and 2 kids, and we want to say thank you for all you're doing in defense of civil liberties and freedom.
I'll ask the question I posed to you at the start of my round. Will you apologize on behalf of the government for this outrageous invite?
And
stand by the invitation.
Of course, what I said in my initial.
You have no shame.
What? Oh my heavens!
There is nothing they fear like the crystal clear sound of someone somewhere telling the truth.
So it will be a world integrating the physical, biological, and digital dimensions. So it will be a new world.
Stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because I can tell you, you cannot comply your way out of a tyranny.
When did you and your government start to become so afraid of your own citizens?
And now he's calling them domestic terrorists and wants to freeze their bank accounts. This has been absolutely outrageous. And everybody now is starting to agree that Justin Trudeau has lost this fight.
That's the press, baby. The press. And there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing.